Join us on an investigative journey as we educate each other on a scientific discovery, concept, or phenomenon.
Then we'll take a dive into the complicated and misleading world of pseudoscience to sort the factual from the fabricated.
I'm Matt McCabe.
And I'm Levi Bateman.
And this is IdioFacto.
You sound about 3 months more mature than the last episode.
Well, that's because I've grown up, Levi.
Seen much of the world and developed into the person that you are today.
You know, that's just what happens when you start to get old.
Mm.
I'll be 30 in November, that's old.
That's proper old.
Ancient.
So what are we doing? What is this episode that we're doing right now?
That's an excellent question. Maybe you should explain that to me.
Maybe I should, because I think it was my idea.
Yeah, I haven't researched anything, so that's a bit unusual for me.
Neither have I. Well, it's because basically we're doing just a bit of a catch-up with the listeners, you guys, and it's because the last time you probably heard from us, unless you're a close friend or family, was about, I don't know, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago? June
19. It's like nearly 3 months ago.
Yeah, and we've both done a lot in that time, and we've seen some cool things and some embarrassing things.
Some embarrassing things?
Some things that you'd be embarrassed to be a part of, I suppose.
Oh, I see.
And so I thought, why don't we just make an episode where it's not about a science topic or a pseudoscience topic, it's just a catch-up and a general chit-chat where we can discuss what we've been doing for the past 2 or 3 months and what we've seen.
Cool. Well, I can tell you what I've seen.
Yeah, you may as well kick off because you had the more interesting start, and it was probably the main reason that we took a break was because of your plans.
We ended up doing a big road trip around New South Wales and saw some spectacular places. I did a live video on the Facebook page from the top of one of the Warrumbungles.
That was a good idea. How'd you come up with that idea?
It was a suggestion from one of the other members of IdioFacto.
What a champion.
I can't remember which one it was. That was an interesting journey, really. We spent a lot of time, probably more than Phoebe would have liked, going through a lot of different kinds of observatories. We went to the Siding Spring Observatory just outside Coonabarabran in New South Wales, and that is the largest optical telescope, definitely in Australia.
That's really interesting because optical telescopes are sort of not primitive, but that concept has been around for a long time, hey?
Yeah, it has been. The basic concept of an optical telescope has been around for a long time, as in it's just a big lens, basically, or a series of lenses that allows you to amplify light. But in this case, it's a large mirror, basically, that focuses light onto a lens. And so you can let in a lot more light than just a regular, like a handheld telescope could let in, because it's a 3.9 meter diameter mirror.
That's amazing. I think I have seen videos of this thing. That's huge.
Yeah. I might put one in the show notes, actually, a picture or a video of one of these huge mirrored optical telescopes. It's a primitive idea, but it is a much more modern design, and it lets us get actual pictures of outer space, effectively.
Yeah, that's cool. And I suppose the modern technology comes in with tracking and pointing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but also in the smoothness of the mirrors.
Right.
Like the smoother the mirrors, the better the reflective surface and the more light you'll observe. So
I saw a radio observatory while I was on holiday as well.
Oh, yes?
I wouldn't say it was a highlight, but it was an interesting point. So while you were travelling around New South Wales, Christy and I went for a holiday to Tasmania. We just spent a week in and around Hobart, and one day we went for a drive through sort of the Coal River Valley. Lots of wineries and whiskey distilleries and that kind of thing, but on the drive home, we passed what I later found out was the Mount Pleasant Radio Observatory. It's run by University of Tasmania, and you can actually drive right up to it, and there's tours of the thing by appointment with the uni, but we sort of parked there. It was closed at the time, but we parked there and we got to see the big satellite dish tracking and changing orientation and things like that. If you were at uni, that'd be a really fun science experiment, or a really fun tool to be able to play with.
The interesting thing about the Siding Spring Observatory as well is that there are actually a lot of telescopes. There's not just the big optical telescope. There's actually a lot of telescopes on the actual site. Because it's so far away from civilization it's a really good place for optical telescopes because there's no light pollution from cities. It's also higher up, so the light doesn't have to travel as far through the atmosphere. So there's a lot of telescopes, and one of those telescopes is an automated optical telescope that it has an internet connection, basically. So pretty much anyone in the world can register to have time to use that telescope.
Whoa, really?
Basically, you can go on this website and register as a user of the telescope and queue yourself in for time, and you can remotely control where it's pointed, basically. You have to pay a subscription fee or whatever, but if you were doing, a PhD...
I guess it's probably not worth it for just amateur stargazers.
It'd be probably worth looking into if you had a pretty keen interest. A lot of the astronomers that use them are amateurs. They're not professional astronomers, so...
Okay. This is an astronomer, not an astrologer.
That's correct. I don't believe astrologers would get much use out of them. They already know how everything works. Speaking of astrology, though, I am back working in retail, unfortunately, temporarily, until I find a job that's a bit more related to biology. But I was talking to a customer today, and we just happened to be talking about birthdays, and we had the same birthday, and she said, "Oh, that means you're a Sagittarius." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a Sagittarius." And what does that mean for me? And she said, "Well, Sagittarius are usually curious." And I was like, well, I guess I am a scientist, so maybe there's something to that. And she said, and a bit feisty.
Yep.
Oh, is that me? Am I a bit feisty? Oh, but also I know plenty of Sagittarians who are neither feisty nor curious.
And I know plenty of non-Sagittarians that are both of those.
Yes, but that's an anecdote, so, you can't read too much into that. It's just an interesting example of astrology is everywhere.
Exactly, and I can't remember which episode we finished with the quote, but there was a quote from a street performer at the Fringe Festival that I saw in Adelaide, and he said, "Just remember, folks, magic is everywhere if you don't understand how science works."
That's it. It was Arthur C. Clarke who said, and I'm paraphrasing this, but it was Arthur C. Clarke who said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Being able to see Jupiter with an optical telescope basically seems like magic to me.
Yes, that's right, unless you understand the hugely complex science behind it, which is incredible.
There are a few things that just boggle my mind, even though I know how they work. And it
Like
just still
what?
seems like magic. Like aeroplanes. It still boggles my mind. I understand the process by which wings provide lift. It just seems wrong. It seems like it shouldn't work.
I know what you mean. I often think that the force of gravity, you think of what an aeroplane weighs. I've got no idea, but I'd imagine it's in the range of, 50 to 200 tons or something like that, depending on the airliner. The force of gravity on that must be huge. And the force of air pressure difference, I guess it has to be enough, but I'm with you. It's amazing that difference in air pressure, just a low air pressure, can keep this massive airliner in the sky.
The maximum takeoff weight of a Boeing 747 is 443,000 kilograms.
Wow. Almost 500 tons.
Or 440 tons, basically. So, we'll say 450 tons, round to the nearest 50,000 tons. Or 50 tons, damn. Round to the nearest 50 tons. Jeez. It's been a while, hey.
Oh, don't make me laugh. I'm ill. I'm ill in case you can't hear it in my voice, and it's not from Matt's terrible maths. It's because I've picked up some sort of a virus, is my guess.
Yeah, anyway, so that aeroplane thing is one thing that still blows my mind. And another one is vinyl records.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty incredible.
The fact that just a needle scraping over microscopic imperfections in a groove on a piece of vinyl can be amplified and make music. That honestly blows my mind every time I think. Like, it just, another thing that just does not seem like it should work.
Actually, I think we might have to do an IdioFacto or an IdioFactoid on speakers and how speakers actually turn kinetic energy into sound energy that reaches our ears.
Well, before that, they turn electrical energy into kinetic energy, and then the kinetic energy makes sound. So they're even more amazing than that.
And it always leaves me heckin' bamboozled how you can have two instruments playing at the same time, and through the speaker, you can hear both of those instruments. For example, a guitar, two guitars playing a harmony together at the same time, both notes are ringing out. Your ears can hear both of those notes, but the way that the speaker works means that only really one of those noises can be made at the same time. Like each speaker itself is only a single channel. It can only vibrate at a certain frequency.
The note that we hear is actually made up of a whole bunch of other notes which are, make up that frequency. So it's not quite as simple as one frequency equals one note.
No, I realise that. And I think we did a little bit of digging one day just out of curiosity. And
we still don't fully understand it though.
Anyway, at the moment, we're just kind of speculating as to how speakers work because neither of us really truly know.
We need to do some digging properly and
I think so.
Sit down for a couple of weeks, really, with a physicist who knows what they're talking about, basically. And
yes, we do. A physicist, not a psychic or anything like that, which sort of reminds me of this business that I happened to run into. Christy and I and another friend of ours, we were out geocaching, which is a really fun game. I don't know if you've ever geocached yourself, or if any of our listeners are into it.
I've only done orienteering, which is the same thing, except you don't get something at the end.
Yeah, it's kind of similar, but basically you're finding these little containers that are hidden all around the world. I guarantee you, wherever you live, there'll be a geocache, probably less than a kilometre from where you are sitting right now. But it's basically just a little container with a logbook inside it, and to find it, you need to have a geocaching account and get the coordinates for this geocache, and then use a GPS device like your phone and work your way to that device. And then when you get there, you've got to find it, and it's usually hidden quite well in fence posts or under a pile of leaves or, in a bolt hole in a park bench or something like that. But that's all of a digression. Basically, we were out geocaching and we came across this business that shall remain nameless, but they specialised in a whole variety of things. Acupuncture, Chinese medicine, cupping, Chinese massage, medical herbalism, iridology, live blood analysis, Reiki, ear candling.
Was this one person or many practitioners?
This was one doctor.
Doctor? A doctor of chiropractic?
A doctor of Chinese medicine.
Ah, that's even worse.
And the doctor shall remain nameless as well. But I did think it would be incredibly interesting to go in for a session and just, from a scientific point of view, pay for a session and then ask how each of these practices works.
Sometime this season, we should both go into a chiropractor or one of these alternative medicine providers and ask if they would be willing to be interviewed. Because I think that would be a really good episode.
It would be, yeah. I'm probably not willing to go to a chiropractor just for risk of injury. But yeah, one of these Chinese medicine or Reiki healers or something like that, it might be interesting to go and interview them.
Yeah.
Whilst trying to be as diplomatic and as polite as we can be.
Well, of course. I just finished a discussion with Phoebe where we were talking about how sometimes I can get a bit passionate about my arguments and it comes across as a little bit...
What? Really? I wouldn't have thought that about you.
Oh, really? Yeah. No, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay.
That's amazing. It came across a lot more in the episode on Simon Sinek than I would have liked. Having listened back to that now, yeah, it sounds like I'm attacking him a lot more than I'm attacking what he's saying. But I assure you, it's not necessarily him. It's anyone who would be making those arguments. They're
Just on that, I think we've probably almost mutually found somebody that we could attack just as hard as we've attacked Simon Sinek. And it's Mr. Joe Rogan.
That's interesting that you say that because I listened to my first episode of his amazingly popular podcast the other day. And some of his assertions, shall we say, got me a little bit worked up, as you would have heard in the few messages that I sent you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, I've never really been into that podcast. I know that it's one of the most popular podcasts on the planet. The main reason that I ever listened to this episode was because he was interviewing the lead singer of one of my favourite bands, Tool, in the lead up to their new album coming out. So Joe Rogan was interviewing Maynard James Keenan. But as you heard, Matt, some of the nonsense that they got talking about was quite infuriating. And not so much Maynard, but just Joe Rogan. And the conviction with which he discusses these topics is really frustrating.
He had me when he told me that ibuprofen actually causes inflammation. I'm not quite sure where his evidence for that came from, but...
No, neither am I. And
he gave an anecdote about a friend of his.
In that discussion as well, well, in that interview, he also got talking about how good things like kimchi and kombucha and acidophilus cultures are and things like that. And Maynard said, "Oh, really? I'm going to have to look that up. Why are they so good?" And Joe said, "Oh man, when you dig into it, this kimchi, it's so good. It's a recipe that's been around for 1,000 years. You know, we knew the benefits of it so long ago." And we've talked about this a few times, but just because a practice has a particular longevity doesn't give it any reason to trust it.
Yes, well, when something was created pre-science, you have to question the scientific rigor with which it was created.
Yeah. I think the frustrating part about Joe Rogan, I actually quite like the guy. Like, he does stand-up comedy. It's very funny. He's a commentator to the UFC. He comes across as a fairly likable guy, but if you really listen to some of the stuff that he says, he talks about utter rubbish that's not substantiated, and he talks about it with such conviction. And the frustrating part of it for me is that because he's a person of such a high profile and he's so well respected, people listen to it and they trust what he's saying because, you know, he wouldn't lie to us. You know, how could he possibly be wrong?
I think it is the conviction with which he says it that really gets... He says things and then moves on straight away.
Yes.
And he says it with such confidence and conviction that it's a bit like Simon Sinek, really, because he says things that seem like they might be true and then moves on without providing any evidence. And then even if you're sort of doubting what they say, you go, "Oh, really?" And then they move on and the conversation moves on. And then you half remember what they've said in a conversation that you have with someone else who says a similar thing. And you go, "Yeah, I think Joe Rogan was talking about how ibuprofen causes inflammation the other day. So that's not the first time I've heard that." And it just reinforces that. And then you start to remember these facts that you've half heard from somebody without any evidence, and it turns into a fact in your head. And that's how things like kimchi and kombucha and, you know, to a much greater extent, anti-vaccination starts, is because someone casts doubts in your mind that just sort of sit there and you doubt them to begin with. And then the more you hear about them, you go, "Oh, somebody else told me about that. Who was telling me about that the other day?" And just over time, that's how those beliefs form.
I think almost everything that he says on his show is anecdotal, which is frustrating. You know, we try really hard on this show to not make anecdotal statements. And of course we do. It's really hard because that's just how humans work. But on the Joe Rogan show or the Joe Rogan podcast, or whatever it's called.
Joe Rogan Experience, it is.
It's an experience. That's right. Almost everything is anecdotal.
Certainly is an experience.
Yeah, that's for sure. So what else has been happening other than travelling Australia? You're now living in a different city.
I am. I'm living in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales, which is close to where I grew up and a beautiful part of the world.
Means that you're even further from your co-host.
That is true. We're now about 1,000 kilometres. In fact, I looked it up on Google Maps the other day. We're exactly 1,000 kilometres as the crow flies away from each other. Yeah. 1,000 kilometres. 1000.
Wow. There you go. And how's that treating you so far? What happens in the Blue Mountains?
Very little, which is excellent.
Nice.
But good weather. There's a lot of good bushwalks around. It's pretty close to Sydney, but not so close that you deal with all of the issues with living in a big city.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is work, really, at the moment, of which I have little.
Right.
But, you know, more time for the podcast, I guess.
Yes. Well, expect big things is what I'm hearing.
Let's not raise expectations too high, but maybe we should announce a release date for Season 2.
Go for it. I'll be just as shocked as all the listeners because I don't know when we're releasing anything either.
October 16th, Wednesday, October 16th is the release date for the first episode of Season 2.
Great.
All going to plan, we should have enough material ready by then to be ahead of ourselves and able to release throughout Christmas and New Year.
Well, we don't want to give away too many secrets. That's sort of the magic of the show, and the listeners don't really need to know how all of these behind-the-scenes things work.
It's just magic. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
That's right. So, just recently, I narrowly avoided joining a cult.
Narrowly?
Yeah. No, that's actually a huge embellishment. But essentially, I saw on a local Facebook group that there was a group of young men that met at different pubs each Friday night and had a meal and some drinks. and had a chat and just generally caught up on life. And the name of the group was an acronym, and I won't say the name of the group, but the values in this group were sort of aligned pretty closely with what I was, and it was just about being a good person, really. And I thought, oh, isn't that good that, in today's day and age that you can, in a town like Mount Gambier, you can get a group of young men that want to catch up and just have a talk and talk about feelings and family and that kind of thing. And I thought, oh, that sounds really good.
Does sound good. Can I come?
Well, you can go if you'd like. I won't be there. I got sort of talking with another friend of mine and in Mount Gambier, and we said, oh, maybe we should go to that. And he said, oh, yeah, sounds good. Anyway, I did a little bit of digging on the organiser and on the group itself, and I realised that the organiser is a local minister at a church. And then I saw the logo of this thing and I noticed that it had a cross in it. And that's when it hit me that it was a church group. But nowhere in the description of the thing did it actually say that it had anything to do with a church or God or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure if it's being run by a priest that it would have been some sort of agenda in there. I don't mind, and we've made a point on this show to not talk about politics or religion. That's probably the two things that we weren't going to... We can talk about it but not argue it, I guess, or try and get our point across, and I'm going to remain neutral on the topic. But it is a little bit sneaky. I mean, if I wanted to gather people and talk about science, I wouldn't say that it's just a general chat over a schnitzel and a schooner.
We don't say, this is a podcast where we talk about life and then proceed to talk about skepticism constantly. We are quite open with the fact that this is a scientific and skeptical podcast.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a close call.
Yeah, well, it does sound like a good option. I'm a bit disappointed that it's church affiliated, if that is the case, because it sounds like a good thing that people should be doing.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed too, but that's fine. There are other ways to meet people. Something that I've been spending a lot of time doing lately is I've been spending a lot of time at the gym. I've just started training under a powerlifting coach, which is really interesting. And anatomically, there's some really interesting parts about the training and the different phases that you go through while you're training and just how the body responds. And I won't bore you or the listeners with it, but just the different ways that you train. And, you train a certain way if you want to build muscle size, and then you train a different way if you want to build that muscle strength. And they're sort of two different things. So, yeah, it's just incredible how adaptable the human body is and how human anatomy and muscles work. Yeah, I'm learning a lot.
That was definitely one of the most interesting parts about my degree was human anatomy and physiology.
Yeah, okay. It's something that I'd like to know more about. I think I sort of I did a little bit of it in year 12 in biology, but most of the other human anatomy that I know about is just anecdotal.
The biology interested. How do you say that word?
Interested.
I heard an interview with Stephen Fry the other day when he was talking about the first Harry Potter audiobook that he read.
Oh, yes. That's brilliant. I've listened to them all.
He had trouble saying the phrase, pocketed it. See, I'm having trouble with it.
Pocketed it.
Pocketed it.
Pocketed it.
And anyway, he condescendingly went to J.K. Rowling and said, this book's quite good. I think it might do quite well. And then she was, I think, a bit offended by his condescension, and then the phrase pocketed it. It is actually quite hard. Anyway, that phrase turned up in every book after that. So
that's great.
Anyway, so yes, that interested.
I told you not to make me laugh.
I share the inability to speak with Stephen Fry, so I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to leave it there. I got interested by general biology instead of human biology specifically. How about that?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, human biology. What's going on? Maybe it's about time to wrap it up.
It's been too long. We just getting back into it, so
we need to practice speaking again. Both of us have been in isolation at a silence retreat for the last 3 months, so this is the first time we've spoken, and what a treat it's been.
All right, well, let's wrap it up for this mini episode, I guess we're calling it. It's a season 2 preview. How about that?
That's right. Yeah, it's been a good chit chat. I'm certainly looking forward to it again. By the end of the last season, I'm not saying I was over it, but it was nice to have a break because I'm sure that everyone can appreciate there's a lot of research that actually goes into making an episode for both of us, probably more so Matt. We have to do a lot of research on the topic, whatever it might be, science or pseudoscience. So there's probably realistically 8 to 10 hours worth of research involved. And then we record the thing, which, a 45-minute episode probably takes more like 2 hours to record by the time we stuff around and get our levels right.
Levi says the same sentence 4 times because he can't get it right.
That's happened once or twice.
And then I put it at the end of the episode because it's funny.
Or you just leave it in so that you can't avoid it. And then there's a whole lot of editing that goes on into it. And Matt does all of that. I've not edited a single episode yet.
And that's because I want creative control over what is broadcast because I make just as many mistakes as Levi and I don't want everyone to know that.
Just as many?
Well, probably fewer. But
Oh, right. Well, it sounds like fewer anyway by the time that you've got your grubby little hands on it.
exactly.
Yeah, and then we have to do a whole lot of work with our host to publish the thing, and then that's when you get it. So, needless to say, there's a bit of work involved, and so the break was quite well-deserved, I think, and it felt good. But the last couple of weeks, I've been itching to learn something new and to get back in the seat behind the microphone and do a little bit of chatter about some science and skeptical thinking.
So have I, hence this little episode, just to get us back into the swing and get everyone a bit excited about Season 2, which, pencil it in, is coming out on Wednesday, the 16th of October, 2019.
Brilliant. Well, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. That's it for this short and interesting and different episode of IdioFacto. Forward all suggestions, hate mail, evidence and arguments to idiofacto@gmail.com. And actually, suggestions would be great, especially for science topics that you're interested in, because we have many of them, but we're not really sure what to tackle first. So let us know. You can do your bit.
Thank you. It's just turned into a real monologue.
I'm interested. I want people to get in contact.
So if you let me speak, my part is...
Go for it.
And you can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all other social platforms at IdioFacto. Or if you know where we live, you can knock on our door and come and have a bloody cup of tea with us or something like that.
I'm not sure we should be encouraging people to come and knock on our doors, Levi.
If they know where we live, they're probably a friend.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
I don't know.
They could just, I don't know, the internet's a weird place. We could be a stalker.